The request for this tip came in by email. This person noticed that we didn't have a quick tip that deals with the Verdaccio technique. It says, I understand that this involves painting a layer of complementary green before applying skin tones, but I cannot for the life of me understand why this might improve an artwork, since especially the foundation layer will be covered by warmer pigments. Well, I believe I can show you how that works. The word Verdaccio is an Italian word, evolved around the 12th century, 11th, 12th century, in Europe, of course. It has to do with the word green. The word verd, well, we won't go into all the derivation of the word, but verd, I think it's pronounced verd, in the Italian, refers to green. All right, so that's why it's called the Verdaccio technique. It was discovered that if that layer of green, and so I'll show you how that works in a moment. If that layer of green is an underpainting, is put in as an underpainting, that glazes and scumbles can be put on top of it. I'm not sure they call them glazes and scumbles then, but the layers can be put on top of that, and the green showing through, especially in the shallow areas, would cause there to be a vibrance in the skin tones. And really, it's a technique that continued to be used in during the Renaissance in Italy, in other places too, a technique for doing portraits, because it does make a vibrant skin tone. It's a very time-consuming technique. So let me show you the theory of how it works. Now, he says, I can't for the life of me see why it would make a better painting. It's not that it makes a better painting, it's that the process itself works for creating more luminous skin tones, or a more realistic feeling. Because if you look at how the shadows fall on your skin, under certain lights, you do see some sort of green tones coming through. And it was about two things. It was about the green tones that we see come through, but it was also about the complementary effect of the complement against the green. So it's not just the warmer tones, but those warmer tones are complementary as far as the hues go. So we can see right in here. Now, this photograph doesn't show it clearly, and actually most photographs don't show it clearly. But if you see this painting, if you were to see this painting in reality, you would sense the green tones in here. Now, I keep saying green, and you might be saying, that doesn't look like green to me, it looks like brown, or it looks like gray. Well, let's go through that and see, why does this work? So briefly, here's green. Now, you recognize this is green, so I'll just put it right there, and that doesn't look anything like that. But if you take the complement of green, now remember that green and red are complements of each other. They will neutralize each other when mixed together, and they will also enhance each other when they're placed side by side, or when they're in relationship. We can see them in relationship to each other. So let's look at how that happens. Now watch. I'm taking some red. Now this is actually the red that would have been used. This is the vermilion that is the same kind of red that would have been used during the Renaissance. Really, they only had about 2 reds available. I won't go real deep into that, but the vermilion was one that they had, and I won't go into the all comes. So you can look it up if you need to. Okay, see, I'm adding the green in now with the brush, adding the green into the red, and I get this. Let's get that on there. All right, now you see that is beginning to look very much like this. If I add too much of the red, or if I add more, I should say, if I add more of the red into the green. Let's get a little bit more than that. Then you can begin to see this. So you see, then it's no longer green. It begins to lean towards red. Now, if I add a little bit more of the green, and this is the way it works. This is the way complements neutralize each other. So we add a little bit more of the green, and then we get something like this, which is, if we add white to it, let's get that just a little bit more, leaning a little bit more towards green, it ends up being a low intensity green. So if I put my little intensity wheel up right here, now you can see that this color I've used on my Verdaccio, which I'll explain in just a moment, this color is right in here. So what it actually is, it's not a full intensity green, but it's a grayish green. So that's the color that was used, and today some artists today still use it. Some portrait painters still use it today, not very many, but it's still fascinating to a lot of artists. So the technique worked. The Verdaccio technique was an underpainting, and the way it worked was to use that tone with white and create a fully defined or full value underpainting where all the details, and I've done a very simple image here, where all the details or all the features of the image are defined in value. Now, in order to get that, the artists weren't using what I used here. I used that to show you that it really is a green. It really is a very, very low intensity, or we could also say low saturated green. So here's what they did. Now I put my brush down and bring my palette knife up. They were using yellow ochre, which is an earth color readily available in that area. They were using yellow ochre, black, and white. Only colors they used to create their Verdaccio. And really it's grisaille, which means it's an underpainting that's done in the full value range. And so here's what they did. Now here's a yellow ochre, so a little bit of black, it didn't take much. A little bit of black into yellow ochre. And we will see how that color is mixed, how they mix that color. Now, another little interesting thing you might try is you can take a fully saturated yellow. Yellow ochre is a neutralized, or somewhat neutralized yellow orange, in fact. But you can take a fully saturated yellow and mix it with black, and you're going to get green. Well, I can show you that here. So as if we take this fully saturated yellow, put it over here. And so the artists who discovered or who invented the Verdaccio technique had bumped into this, had discovered. Remember that techniques in painting evolved over many, many centuries. They didn't all just happen at once. And in the 12th century, oil had not even been discovered yet. So they were still working in egg tempera or tempera and doing murals. And this really, I think, if I'm correct here, it started out being used more in murals. Well, you can see there, just adding just yellow into black, that ends up being a very low intensity green. All right, so how did it work? Well, when green and its complement are side by side, we get a visual vibrance. The colors cause each other to vibrate. And so what they were doing is in the shallow areas, and you can see it here, sometimes the shallow areas might not contain any color whatsoever. But the artists in that time, especially during the Renaissance, would have been using a medium, and they would have been using either this is Indian red, which was available at that time, or vermilion. Both those reds were available. And so they might have been using, maybe, let's take just a little bit of Indian red. And it's very strong, so it won't take much. And then if I then glaze over this, you can see already. Let's get that. I didn't have it mixed in the brush quite well enough. There we go. Like that. So if I glaze over that, you can see that some of that green comes through. And that creates a visual vibrance. When you get the whole painting, or as you work the whole painting, you can begin to see that vibrancy. The green coming through influences this and enables us to see that as more vibrant. Let me see if I can get that a little bit better blended. Now I can blend this over into just the green. Now watch what happens when I do that. You see that? Now, do you sense now how this begins to feel? You'll begin to see that as more vibrant. Now, as it comes into the lights of the skin tones, of course, that most of that will get covered up. But let me show you how that works. So this is a very simplified demonstration I'm showing you here of how the Verdaccio technique works. So I'm going to pull some white down here. And I'm going to mix, again, I'm going to mix the Indian red in it. The Indian red, when mixed with white, well, let me show you, I'll just show you the full range, does begin to take on what we recognize as being Caucasian skin tones. And you can see when I do that, let's get just a little bit more of that mixed in with, a little bit more of the white mixed in with that. Pull it down just a little bit more here. And then I'll show you. Put that on the back of the palette, and I'll show you in Leonardo's painting. Now you can see those tones. See them right in here? So that's pretty much a clue to us that he was using something of that in that color range, or that most likely using an Indian red or something like that to create the skin tones themselves. Now, if we take a little bit of that, and again, I'm going to put just a little bit of medium in that. But all this is very thin. These are very thin layers. And the reason it took such a long time is one layer had to be dried before another layer could go on. So the reason I did my Verdaccio before we got here, I had to do it yesterday with liquid in oil paint in order for it to dry. It could have been done with any quick, fast drying medium, but I thought that would, that's the way I did it. All right, now watch this. We'll put just a little bit of medium. This is liquid I'm using. Somebody's going to ask me that. And it doesn't matter what kind, any medium would do this, any oil medium. Or if you're working in, you could do this with acrylics. Of course, you could just use an acrylic medium. Now watch this. If I pull this, I didn't have quite enough. I need just enough oil in there so that it slides on, which is probably a good thing for you to see. Let's pull that on. Pull it on here. Now you can begin to see that vibrancy. Now let's get that blended. We'll just blend the shadow into the light here. Give it a little bit more of a blend. Have to blend more carefully when you're working with glazes and scumbles. Now, lights are opaque colors, I should say, not lights. Opaque colors over anything or over any other color. Opaque colors are going to obscure. You don't see as much of the underpainting come through when you're working with opaque colors. And so now let's pull just a little bit more, of the glaze on this side. Just a little bit. There we go. Now you can begin to see. Now you can begin to see the kind of vibrancy that we see right in here in the skin tone. So we don't need to really touch right here. And if you look closely, some of the Renaissance paintings, or some paintings that use the Verdaccio technique, will bring the glaze all the way over and let that green come through. Others will not glaze over them, just allow the green to show here in its form. So you see, it's not just to make a better painting, but it's to create that luminosity of the skin, or to interpret skin tones of lights and shadows as they appear to our eyes, and to make them more appealing. So I hope you see, I hope that clears up for you what the Verdaccio technique is and how it works. You play with that if you're a portrait painter. It's more for portrait painters, but it doesn't mean it can't be used by doing other subjects too. So you might give it a try. If you don't like it, ditch it, as always. If you do like it, well, then this might open up some other doors for you. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell, so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianeMize.com, where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.